The first lie I ever told Kesrin was that I would have shot her if the crash hadn't taken my sidearm. The first lie she ever told me was that she believed it. My name is Officer Maren. I flew prisoner transport for the Coalition, which is a polite way of saying I delivered people to places they did not want to go, and I had gotten very good at not thinking about it. The manifest that day listed one detainee, female, Ashatari, high value, and a flight plan that crossed the verge in 4 jumps. The Ashtari were the enemy. 11 years of war, a ceasefire nobody trusted, and standing orders that said a downed pilot in the verge should expect no rescue and attempt no contact. The missile that took us was Coalition. I want that on the record before anything else. I saw the signature on my own scopes in the last 3 seconds. Friendly code, friendly bird, and I had a long time to think about what that meant afterward, on the ground, in the wreck, in the rain. It meant the manifest was the target. It meant somebody on my side wanted my prisoner dead more than they wanted me alive, and the tribunal that was supposed to receive her was never supposed to receive her at all. We came down on Hollow's End, a moon with a name like a warning, breathable air, gravity a shade light, and a sky the color of an old bruise that rained 9 hours out of every 26. The transport broke in half on a ridge of black stone. I woke upside down with blood in my eyes and the detainee cell torn open like paper, and my first coherent thought was that I was dead, because an Ashtari stood over me, freed by the crash, with my emergency axe in her hands. The briefing files say the Ashtari are tall, ash-pale shading into silver, with dark markings that sweep from temple to collarbone like calligraphy, and eyes a gold that has no business in a face. The files say they run 4 degrees hotter than us, that they were bred for hard worlds, that they do not show fear. The files do not say what it is like to lie broken in a burning transport while one of them looks down at you, holding an axe, deciding. She cut me out of the harness, not gently, competently. She dragged me clear before the fuel cells cooked off, dropped me in the mud, stood in the rain with the fire behind her, and said, in flawless Coalition standard, "Your own side shot us down. I watched the scope through the cell grate. So before you reach for whatever weapon you think you still have, pilot, do the arithmetic." I did the arithmetic. The arithmetic said, the only living soul within 400 kilometers who does not actively want me dead is the enemy I was delivering to die. "Eli," I said. It hurt to talk. "Ribs." She looked at me for a long moment, rain streaming down the calligraphy of her face. "Kesrin," she said. And then, because the Ashtari are not sentimental, "If your ribs are broken, you will slow me down. I will splint them tonight. Complain quietly. Here is what I knew about the Ashtari after 11 years of war. Nothing. Propaganda, silhouettes, kill ratios. Here is what I learned in the first 9 days on Hollow's End, while the wreck's beacon, which she disabled with a competence that told me exactly what kind of high value she was, stayed dark, and we walked north toward the moon's one derelict relay station, and the rain came down like the sky had a quota. I learned that she slept 2 hours in 6, sitting up, and that her eyes in the dark held light like a banked fire. I learned that the heat of her was real. 4 degrees doesn't sound like much until you are hypothermic in a flooded ravine, and she hauls you against her side with an irritated sound, and you feel warmth pour into you like something being poured, and you hear her heart, slower than a human's, heavier, like distant artillery, and you think, with the last of your sense, oh no. I learned that she had been a treaty negotiator. That is what high value meant. Not a soldier, not a spy. the architect of the ceasefire itself, the one Ashitari their hardliners and ours could both agree needed to vanish, and the tribunal was the cover story, and my transport was the murder weapon, and I had flown it smiling. I told her that on the fourth night, in the lee of a basalt shelf, both of us soaked, sharing the one thermal blanket, because dying of pride is still dying. I said I was sorry. I said it badly, the way you say things you mean. She was quiet for a long time, the rain ticking on the stone above us, her shoulder a line of heat against mine. 11 years, she said finally. I have studied your species across a negotiating table. You lie with your mouths and confess with everything else. You have been confessing since the crash. She turned her head, gold eyes in the dark. Too close, exactly close enough. You did not know what your cargo was. I knew within an hour. Stop apologizing for the men who aimed the missile. It is tedious, and you are not them, and we have 9 days of walking left. And after 9 days, the relay. I transmit to my delegation, they retrieve me, and the ceasefire I built does not die in a swamp. A pause. The rain. The artillery of her heart, which I could feel now through my own shoulder, and had stopped pretending I couldn't. And I will tell them the pilot is mine, under parole. They will not touch you. Mine, I said. Is that the official terminology? I felt rather than saw her almost smile. The markings at her temple shifted, the way they did, I was learning, when something got past her guard. It is the only Ashtari category that will keep you alive, she said. Do not enjoy it. I enjoyed it for the remaining 5 hours of darkness, lying awake, doing a new kind of arithmetic, the kind with no good answers, the kind where the enemy's heartbeat is the only warm thing on a cold moon, and the war is 400 kilometers of mud away, and her voice saying mine has lodged somewhere under the splinted ribs and will not be removed. The Ashtari do not show fear. I learned, on the 6th day, what they show instead. The hunter-killer drone found us at the river crossing. Coalition signature. The same friendly code that had killed our ship, loitering on the far bank like patience itself. We went to ground in the reed beds, pressed flat in the freezing shallows. Her body over mine because her thermal profile read as native fauna and mine read as target. And for 2 hours we breathed in turns. Her mouth an inch from my ear, counting the drone's passes in a whisper in her own language. And I lay in the cold water under 4 degrees of impossible warmth and understood that I was no longer afraid of dying on this moon. I was afraid of the drone leaving. I was afraid of having to move apart. When it finally went, when she rolled off me into the reeds and the cold rushed back in like an accusation, neither of us spoke. She looked at the bruised sky. I looked at her. The rain started again. Eli, she said, to the sky, in the voice of a negotiator who has reviewed all positions and finds them indefensible. This is becoming a problem. I know, I said. We have 3 days of walking left. I know, I said. She turned her head in the reeds, and the gold of her eyes was not banked now, not guarded, and the markings at her temple had shifted all the way into something I had no file for and did not need one. Then walk fast, she said. We did not walk fast. I want to be honest about that. We walked like 2 people carrying something fragile between them, which we were. The 7th night, we found the hot spring. It steamed in the rain at the foot of a basalt fall, mineral blue, the first warmth on Hollow's End that wasn't her, and we stood at its edge like it was a trap, because everything else on that moon had been. She tested it, declared it safe in the flat voice she used for tactical assessments. And then, because the Ashtari are not sentimental, and because we were both filthy and frozen and 7 days past pretending, she began, matter-of-factly, to unfasten the field jacket, and paused, and looked at me, and the look was a question. And it was not about the water. I have been asked, since when it started, the feeds, the inquest, my own debrief, when did it start, Flight Officer Maren? And I always say the crossing, or the blanket, or the crash, because the true answer is unprofessional. The true answer is that it started the way the spring started. Pressure, underground, for a long time, and then a place thin enough to let it through. Of that night, I will tell you what the inquest never got. The water held the day's heat, and she held 11 years of war, and both let go slowly. The calligraphy of her markings ran further than the files knew. Shoulder, spine, the curve of her hip, a long, elegant sentence of them. And I read it with my hands in the steam and the dark, while the rain came down 2 degrees too cold and could not reach us. She made a sound I had never heard from her, low, unguarded, completely unlike artillery, and said something in Ashatari against my throat. And when I asked what it meant, she bit my shoulder, gently, with great precision, which I correctly understood to mean later. 4 degrees is not a statistic. 4 degrees in the dark, in the water, with her hands learning me like terrain she intended to hold, is a climate. I lived there. The war was a rumor from another sky. We were very quiet because of the drones, and the quiet made it more. Every gasp swallowed. Every word pressed skin to skin instead of spoken. An entire night conducted in the lowest frequencies 2 bodies can produce. And I understood at last why her people whisper their vows. Loud things are for strangers. After, in the shallows, her heartbeat under my ear doing its slow, heavy thunder, she finally translated. The things she had said against my throat. It was not poetry. The Ashtari do not have poetry. They have terms. It meant, she said, accepted. The word their negotiators use when a clause survives every objection and is entered into the treaty. Permanent, binding, beyond amendment. You should know the weight of it, she said, before you let me say it again. I let her say it again. The relay station rose out of the marsh on the 9th day like a rusted cathedral, and the last 2 kilometers were the worst of the whole walk, because the tower meant rescue, and rescue meant her delegation, and her delegation meant the war's geometry came back. An Ashtari negotiator could not return from the dead holding a coalition pilot's hand. We both knew it. We had not said it. Saying it was the only negotiation she had ever avoided. The transmitter took her 4 hours to resurrect, in the rain, swearing at it in 2 languages, while I stood watch with a salvaged flare gun and rehearsed speeches I would never give. When the panel finally lit, she keyed the array, sent the pulse, coordinates, her ministry cipher, 3 seconds, and then her hand stayed on the panel, and she did not turn around, and she said, "There is a clause I have not presented." Present it. My retrieval will arrive within a day. Yours would not come at all. Your own command shot you down, and the inquest you would walk into is run by the men who fired. She turned. Rain on the calligraphy. Gold eyes level, terms and conditions voice. The voice that had ended a war, shaking very slightly. The clause is this: you board with me. Parole, my custody, my testimony. You will be the first coalition witness inside an Ashtari court, and your evidence, the scope logs, the friendly code, ends the men who did this. It will be called treason on your side. It will be called precedent on mine. A breath. and you would be with me. Those are the terms. I am told I am very difficult to live with. I run hot. I am owed 11 years of quiet mornings, and I intend to collect them with you if the clause is accepted. The rain came down. The tower hummed. Somewhere south, on a world that had spent 11 years teaching me whom to hate, there was a flag, a pension, a court-martial with my name already typed. Accepted, I said, in Ashtari. I had made her teach it to me in the spring, suspecting, even then, that I would need the word with the weight on it. The markings at her temple did the thing the files have no name for. I have a name for it now. I am the only human who does. Her people's ship came down through the bruised sky at dawn, and I will not pretend the boarding was warm. 11 years is 11 years, and a row of gold eyes measured me like a claws they intended to strike. But she walked beside me up the ramp, one hand at the small of my back, broadcasting on every frequency her species reads. Mine, parole, accepted, and not one of them touched me. And the inquest got the scope logs, and the men who fired the missile learned that the negotiator they had tried to bury came back with the murder weapon's pilot as her star witness and, eventually, to the strangled outrage of 2 governments, as considerably more. The ceasefire held. It is called a peace now, officially, as of last spring. The treaty's final draft contains, at her insistence, a small subsection on the rights of mixed households in the demilitarized worlds, which the diplomats call the Hollow's End provision, and which she calls, privately, the clause we negotiated in a hot spring, usually while I am trying to sleep, because she discovered on that moon that I blush, and has treated it as actionable intelligence ever since. We live on Meridian Station now, in the neutral band, where the window in our quarters faces a sun that sets too slowly, and she still sleeps 2 hours in 6, sitting up, gold eyes banked, one hand resting on me like a signature on a document she does not intend to renegotiate. Some nights the rain on the station's recyclers sounds almost like Hollow's End, and she pulls me into the 4 degrees without waking, artillery heart slow and certain under my ear. They ask me still, at every reception, every anniversary of the peace, when did you stop seeing her as the enemy? And I give the diplomatic answer, the one for the feeds. But the true answer is a moon the color of a bruise, and an axe she did not use, and a word with weight on it said twice in the steam, in the dark, where the war could not reach, and accepted, permanent, binding, beyond amendment.